Right. Well, looks like everybody's here, so let's get started. So, yeah, we're here to talk about if AI is stealing your website's thunder. And this is because I keep kind of getting asked this question, which is, has AI killed the charity website? Um, and I think the answer to that, clearly, if we look at all of the charity websites that we manage and we have access to the kind of data about, is a resounding no. There's a lot of like quite niche references in here that will probably only make sense to sort of 35 plus year olds. So I do apologise for that. Prizes if you can kind of get these guess what these are in the chat. But AI is definitely having a really significant impact, and it's starting to hurt a bit. So we can see kind of across the board of the charity websites that we manage that there's a reduction in traffic. That we think is related to changing user behavior based on AI. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that as we go on. But just before we do, just a little bit about me. In case you haven't met me before, my name's Matt Howarth. I'm one of the two co-founders of Reason Digital. I'm a real human being, not an AI, which is quite nice and refreshing in this day and age, isn't it? And of course, because AI is so full of kind of misinformation, thanks to deep fakes and things like that, I wanted to make a personal kind of human to human commitment to you today that nothing in this presentation is fake or AI generated in any way whatsoever. But as I said, I founded Reason Digital, and Reason Digital is a social enterprise. We work exclusively with mission-led organizations like charities, and we help them to use technology, which, back in the day was kind of building websites, then it was kind of social media, then it was apps, and now very much it's AI. We've been going for around 17, 18 years, and we've helped hundreds and hundreds of different purpose-led organizations. And that puts us in a really interesting position because we've seen these technological changes kind of happen before. And we also have access to quite a lot of data, both qual and quant, about how some of these technological changes are impacting the sector. So what change do we mean? Well, I'm kind of not talking about AI in general. Really, I'm talking about what the hell has happened to the world since about 2017. So in 2017, somebody came up with this equation, which I'm not going to explain, thankfully, for a Tuesday morning, but this is called the attention mechanism. And it's kind of like the E equals MC squared of generative AI. And since then, we've seen more and more tools being launched that take advantage of this mechanism to be able to produce results that kind of feel a little bit like magic. Biggest of these, of course, being ChatGPT. And we reckon ChatGPT is probably just about to hit around about 1 billion users. So, this is a really significant kind of change, not just to technology, but to society as a whole. So, how is that impacting kind of websites and user behavior? Well, the answer to that is, quite a lot, as you would expect. And we're actually starting to see real data come through about the impact that this is having. I think it's fair to say that I found that kind of a little surprising, both how quick it's happening and also exactly how it's impacting. So in order to explore that, we want to kind of delve into the future of charity and kind of mission-led websites. And to do that, just to build a little kind of understanding with what's going on. Let's imagine that you're a user of one of these websites or a prospective user to one of these websites. So let's say you're kind of newly diagnosed with a condition. Have a little think to yourself, what is likely to be your next step? You open your laptop or more likely pick up your smartphone. And do you A, go through a charity website by memory? So you think, okay, yeah, it's conditionname.org.uk and you type that in. Do you search the web for the condition, perhaps some questions that you've got about it, or do you now spin up a ChatGPT window or another AI like Gemini or Claude and start punching in questions? Now, I imagine most of us don't even remember our own charity website off by heart. I know that my memory's been a little bit impacted since COVID, so I can barely remember my own name sometimes, let alone the exact web address of the organization that I'm working with. So it's probably not that. But then if you were to use Google search, then what you might find is that not only are you being exposed to, the usual kind of Google search results, but you're also being exposed to what they call an AI overview. So above all the results, even the paid for ads, you're probably getting an AI generated summary of what a lot of the links below are saying. So even if a user is using search to try and reach some information on, say, a charity website, they're probably getting some AI first. And that's part of this sort of trend online that's being called the zero-click internet. So the idea for that is that we're potentially walking away from an internet where we search for something, we click on a search listing, we make loads more clicks, kind of browsing that website. We maybe click on a donate link or a sign up to newsletter link or a sign up to fundraising event link. Instead, we just type or maybe even speak out loud what it is that we want to know. And then with no clicks at all, we get exposed to some helpful information that potentially satisfies our query. And there's been some recent work on kind of trying to quantify how users are relying on this. So around about 80% of users of search are relying on AI summaries around 40% of the time. So what we know from this is like the majority of people are using these AI summaries. About 20% of people are kind of whizzing past them and clicking anyway. And of that majority, of that 80%, around 40% of those people are relying on it quite significantly now, and that's having an impact on the levels of traffic that we're seeing. So we know that many charities now are experiencing a kind of drop, particularly in organic search. So we are seeing that around about the level of 40%. And I would say that the charities that are being hit sort of first and foremost of that are your kind of condition-based charities or your kind of life event-based charities. So by that, I mean, perhaps organizations maybe supporting people with kind of diabetes, or perhaps organizations supporting people with job loss, organizations that are kind of there when people kind of have questions and that are kind of directly servicing beneficiaries within the same market that the website is targeted at. Those are the ones that seem to be being hit the most. And actually, if you think backwards, that kind of makes sense, right? Because they're potentially benefiting from a lot of traffic, from a lot of people asking these questions. And now that some of that traffic is being redirected. And it's not just those redirections to chat services like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, but also there's now specific search services that are powered by AI. So a popular one of these is called Perplexity, which is worth checking out. So that basically is like a search engine, but instead of just giving you a bunch of links, it actually reads all of the links that it gives you and then creates a generative AI summary of what's on the other side of those links, to avoid you needing to click multiple links, read it, come to your own kind of conclusions and your own thoughts about the matter. Because heaven forbid we have our own thoughts. And obviously we've got tools like ChatGPT still very much the king in terms of kind of generative AI usage, both internationally, both in the West and in the UK, not yet been displaced despite all the attempts by Microsoft and Google. So you can see here that what's kind of interesting, I think, for users about ChatGPT is not just the fact that it avoids them needing to kind of click through and read quite a lot of content on an internet that, let's face it, is increasingly difficult to kind of browse because of sort of pop-ups and ads and other things, but also really allows for deep tailoring of the information. We're seeing users be able to tailor things not just for the kind of specific maybe condition that they have, but also for kind of lifestyle factors and preferences and informational preferences, and get information that feels kind of tailored for them as if by an expert. Now, of course, it's not been tailored by an expert, so it quite often gets things wrong. It's getting better. It's probably in a bit of a dangerous zone now where it gets things right so often that people are starting to kind of lean on it, and maybe stopping noticing when there's those, odd kind of errors with it. Issues for charities, I think, particularly in the UK, are the fact that it's probably leaning on quite a lot of US information. So if people are asking for information about how to navigate, for example, a healthcare system, then it's probably going to be giving them information that's a kind of a mix of systems from around the world with a particular emphasis on the US healthcare system. So that can be quite confusing, alongside drug names that might be different in the US, or the names of kind of benefits or entitlements that might also be different in the US. So those are some of the very kind of practical barriers that kind of users are experiencing whilst using this, but potentially not knowing that they're experiencing. So it's not like they're looking at that and always going, "Oh yeah, this is the wrong information. I should just find a charity website in the UK and lean on that." They're just kind of in some cases taking that information in So that poses a problem for us because that we're not even seeing that kind of user need to look for the alternative. So I really implore you to use some of these AI services and punch queries into them that are related to what your users are looking for, especially if you've been doing user research, and the exact kind of worries, queries, etc. Lean on that user research, plug it into generative AI services, and see what kind of results you get. See what the quality of those results are, and see if it references your charity in any way. What you'll probably find if you do that is you might have a bit of a moment like this where it's kind of like, oh, this looks like startlingly similar to some of the stuff that we're putting out there, particularly if you're kind of the main charity in your kind of cause area. And the reason for that is that a lot of these AI services have always been trained on content that's available on the internet, which will include your own content. Helen, see in the chat saying, I literally had my words given back to me. It's quite spooky when that happens, isn't it? And that's because these companies have trained this model, this big blob of maths, of course, but is able to kind of regurgitate information and also reformulate that information into kind of new forms, new formats from a lot of existing material. And we know that the political kind of direction that we're going in, only yesterday, Donald Trump fired the head of the Copyright Office 2 days after a report that AI training might not constitute fair use under existing US copyright law. We're seeing a bit of cold feet in the UK about taking such a hard stance on it. But I think by and large, the writing's on the wall. These AI companies are going to be able to kind of lobby to make sure that that they're going to be able to continue to be able to do that. And of course, even if they're stopped from doing that, the horse is bolted now. They've got that training data already from your website. So really, we're kind of waking up to a reality as a sector that everything that you made on your charity website just got stolen, and there's basically no way to get it back. And that's a painful pill to swallow, especially when you consider that what we've been doing as charities for many years is creating really good content that people really need at some of the most difficult moments of their life, content that they can really trust and that they can really lean on. And then we've been using that to attract search traffic to our website, which then we've been able to expose over time to kind of call to actions to sign up to our newsletter or to sign up for a fundraising event or to become a regular donor. And actually, if we diminish that content element, if people are no longer seeking that content, or they can get just as good content elsewhere, they think, potentially that interrupts this kind of this cycle and this conversion funnel that we've been talking about for years, where just make a lot of content, attract a lot of people into the funnel, and then some of those will convert. Well, potentially someone else has just put another funnel in front of your funnel, and they're siphoning off users that would have otherwise kind of come to your website to find that information. So there's no two ways about it. I remain very excited about AI, the potential that it has, particularly the potential that it has to do social good. But we're in a bit of a situation as a sector here. I think we need to start talking about it, and we need to start trying to find ways to deal with it. It would definitely grade the current response to this meme that it sort of feels like everything's on fire. Everybody's a bit like, okay, well, this is kind of fine. And then we can, eventually wake up to the realization that maybe things aren't as good as they suggest. So I did actually ask AI for help with this problem, of course. And I tried a variety of mediums to do that, including one where I fed it this cartoon and asked it for the completion of this cartoon. And this is actually what you get. This is one example of what you get if you ask AI to complete this cartoon. So, not entirely sure how helpful that is. Maybe the solution is something to do with bees. We're not quite sure yet. But what I think a process that a lot of them have, a lot of people are kind of going through is kind of like the 5 stages of grief model. Because this is such a profound change to kind of what's going on in our sector. So I've mapped my recommendations to the Kubler-Ross model, the 5 stages of grief. And therefore, I think we start with where a lot of us are at the moment, which is kind of denial that AI is a bad thing. So AI is potentially, a good and a bad thing. And I think we need to think about ways in which we can kind of make best use for it to help solve this problem. But we also need to kind of critically think about the impact that it's having in general. And I think that the most common kind of response that I see is really people thinking, okay, well, maybe we can mitigate the impact of AI by having our comms and marketing team lean on AI to generate like way more content. And maybe we can offset the losses that we have from search by building so much content on our website, building out so much content on our website that actually we attract more traffic and we kind of solve the problem. And what I would say is that if you do that, I think you've got to be very careful. And you'll see a little bit more on why about this soon. But as a rule of thumb, I would say that if you're generating content with AI, you've got to think, am I producing content or experiences or kind of whatever it is you're creating that are better than if I hadn't used the AI in the first place? Because otherwise, what we're going to experience is a kind of race to the bottom where de facto the content on our website will be no better than what users can get from AI because we've used AI to generate it and we've not added anything. We've not curated it. We've not thoroughly fact checked it. We've not added the experience of the people working in our organization. So I would suggest that this kind of initial kind of response to AI, where we think, yes, let's just use it to generate more content, is not the way forward. That said, it can be used to increase the volume and the quality of the content that you're producing if it's used in ways that are more smart than just getting it to write everything for you. The next stage of denial is anger. So the next stage of the model is anger. And what we've seen is some charities now try to build a kind of moat around their content, particularly their best content. And they can do this by using something called a robots.txt file, which is a bit of kind of techie stuff. Basically, you can stick it on your website, and it's a kind of a very polite ask, a kind of a note to search engines and other kind of robots that might be reading your website to ask them to not steal all of your content, please, to not scrape it. And this can prevent you from showing up on search engines, for example, if you didn't want your website being found. We commonly use it when we're building websites for charities and we don't yet want them to be discovered by Google. But you can also use the same idea to stop ChatGPT and some other services like Gemini and Google AI overviews from accessing your content. And at first, this seems sensible, and it may indeed be sensible for kind of very high value pieces of content that you're really keen not to get ripped off. But actually, I think we've got to wake up to the fact that we're in a new kind of informational reality now, and leaning on kind of AI is going to be absolutely kind of critical. Not only because we're going to be reliant on trying to get some dribs and drabs of traffic and kind of brand awareness from AI, but also perhaps we feel a bit of a moral obligation to try and influence what AI sees as the truth when it comes to the cause area that we work in. Because if users are getting poor quality content from AI, but trusting it anyway, and we're not doing anything to address that, then, is that something we should be doing? So I'm actually kind of advising people kind of away from this approach, even though I really understand the kind of place that it's coming from. So the next stage that we go through in grief or change adjustment is the bargaining stage. And I think there's less organizations here. I guess a lot of you are at this stage if you've decided to come to this webinar because you're thinking about this and you're connecting to information on it. And I think it's a good thought. How can we get traffic from AI? If we're losing traffic from search, more users are reading AI overviews, they are connecting to ChatGPT and doing their search effectively there. How can we try and recover some of those losses? So there's a whole burgeoning kind of industry being created to answer this very question. So I'm sure we're all used to our LinkedIn inboxes being inundated by people offering us search engine optimization, SEO services, if we have anything like digital or content or something in our job title. There's a new industry that's been created that's similar called AI optimization or generative engine optimization, AI or GEO. GEO seems to be the term that's kind of emerging, partly because Google have started to use the acronym AIO to refer to AI overviews on their kind of search listings. So there's a lot we could go into about AI optimization. I'm going to give you the top tips on it in a second. But one thing just to know is that actually there's quite a big relationship between making your website optimized for a search engine to come along and kind of read and understand, and helping optimize it for a generative engine like ChatGPT to be trained on. So actually, if you've done a lot of foundational work to get good SEO on your website, generative optimization is kind of like just being really good at SEO with a few kind of extra bits on top, rather than an entirely new kind of field of practice to think about. Which I don't know about you, but I found that a huge relief when I learned about that, because keeping on top of the latest trends in search is already quite a big job. So, looking at examples of this and some tips, I think it's important to understand kind of that there isn't just kind of one thing called generative AI. There's obviously lots of different models; they all behave different ways. So it's important to try and test things out on different models. I've done a lot of that to help deliver the recommendations in this training, but I really recommend that you try it as well. Not only are there different models, but there's different types of queries that you can use AI for, right? You can do anything with it, from ask it to write a poem, or a letter, all the way through writing content or answering a question or doing some maths, and it kind of reacts to each of these things slightly differently. I've kind of categorized it for the purposes of this talk into kind of transactional queries. I just need to get something done, and non-transactional queries where, I'm kind of interested in being entertained, or kind of reading a bit more about this, or doing something else. A lot of the search traffic that we're seeing fall off are these kind of more transactional queries. I've tried asking ChatGPT here and said I want to donate to charity. I don't think many users will actually go to ChatGPT and say this, sadly, for our kind of fundraising teams, but it gives you a good example of how it works. So it starts to ask you a few questions to try and refine the search. And then what you see is this pop up, if you are paying attention. Briefly, you'll see some grey text pop up under ChatGPT that says searching the web. Gemini does a similar thing. And what that means is that basically all this is doing is kind of searching the internet on behalf of users, and therefore search engine optimization techniques are effectively the fix to trying to get listed in response to one of these transactional queries. So optimizing for search will help you with the transactional queries, so doubling down on your SEO. What you'll find is that these transactional queries often include links to websites because they're generated from kind of search results, and the user is trying to get something done that they can only complete on a website. Just mentally log that. They're trying to get something done that they can only complete on a website. That gives us the clue that we will use later about how we can react even more deeply to this. Non-transactional searches, so that might be somebody kind of, I've just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I'm not sure what lifestyle changes I need to make, I could do with some help with this. Something that's a bit less A to B, that's hard to know whether you've kind of absolutely satisfied the task or not, are reacted to very differently by ChatGPT in particular, which generates content based on its training data set by and large, rather than going out to search for it. And you'll probably recognize some of this content if you search, if you give a query around your cause area. But what you'll find is it tends to not include links. Even when there's facts and stats are referenced, that if you search for those facts and stats, you can clearly find where it retrieved those from as part of its kind of training data process. So frankly, that's just a bit annoying, that even if you optimize your website to be used for training data for these services, that more often than not, they won't reference your website and they won't provide a link. Sometimes they will if the user asks for it and asks for sources to be cited or asks for information to be searched. But most users that we observe are not doing that. So that really poses us a headache. Gemini works a fair bit differently. It's fair to say Google have a lot more invested in the idea of people clicking on links, because it's only the kind of slightly Pavlovian training that they've got us into, where we press the button and click on the link, that makes us click on their ads, which are primarily what Google uses to survive. So what you'll find with Gemini is that at the bottom of pretty much every response, it gives you a little carousel of links, which are either what it's been trained on, or just a separate search, because these AIs don't obviously always know where they've got the information from. They're just a big blob of maths that doesn't necessarily retain references. So often what you'll see is that there's a kind of a slight mismatch between something that's being said and some of those results. So it is possible, and we are seeing kind of traffic come from Gemini to some of our kind of charity websites. But of course, a user's probably, the vast majority of users has probably answered their question by that point. So it's probably only going to be a smaller number of users which are going to be clicking on those links. So how can we react to this? What should we do in response? What kind of top tips do I have for you? Well, I think, it's not really a quick one, but I think the most important thing that you can do, even though it's not an easy fix, is aim to create the ultimate guide to your organization's cause area. Okay. So one of our clients, Guts UK, fantastic organization, all about kind of digestive conditions and digestive health, which is a really kind of underspoken about, under research kind of area that has a huge impact on people dealing with those. I think, despite working with relatively small budgets compared to huge national charities, they are making a really good attempt at making the ultimate guide to digestive disorders. So they've got, a list of pretty much every digestive condition on there with really good information about each of them. They've got pages by symptom, talking about what that symptom is, what it feels like, how to manage that symptom, what conditions it might point to. They've got health and lifestyle content about things like how alcohol affects your digestive system, whether the Mediterranean diet helps your gut health. So they're making a real play to try and be the authority on the internet, particularly in the UK, about digestive health. And I think this is something we all need to consider, because actually, if we can create the ultimate authority, there will still be a reason for people to visit that. And it's something that AI is probably going to trust as the definitive place to signpost people to. Thing to consider when you're creating that is this kind of Google mantra, this mnemonic that they give out if you read their content about how to optimize for search and now how to optimize for Gemini, is that they talk about EAT. That is prioritizing search results and information that comes from experience. And of course, we have a lot of users, a lot of service users that have lived experience of the cause that we work in. We have a lot of researchers and experts on tap that have a lot of experience in the fields that they're from, and that have a lot of expertise, therefore. Where there is authoritativeness, are we kind of a primary source for some of this information? And are we trustworthy? Is the information we're putting out there true? Does it tend to get referenced by other organizations? Do we tend to be pointed to as a source of information? And by following these principles, Google suggests that you will do far better in the long term on Google and Google Gemini than you will just trying to game the system and throw a load of kind of poor quality mud at the wall in terms of kind of search optimized kind of content. So it really prioritizes a sense of like, do the right thing, create deep valuable content, and you're bound to still win. And I think I would agree with that, even though I think it does discount some of the genuine kind of issues that we're seeing right now with a massive reduction in traffic to websites for people that are doing that and are creating that content. Another way to try and get referenced in AI-generated search results and AI services is to provide a lot of facts. They seem to be quite hungry for little kind of facts. So single sentence facts that relate to queries that people might be searching for or asking for are a good way to get these references. And more often the engines will reference a kind of fact that they found. So there's an example on the Feeding America website about hunger in America. You've got to think, as well as trying to be the kind of broadest, most trusted, most authoritative source in your area. If either you can't do that or you're already investing a lot in that, make sure you remember the long tail. And the long tail is just as relevant, if not more relevant, for generative AI than it is for search. So for those of you that haven't come across this this kind of phrase before, if we think of a graph where we have, how many people are searching for something or asking AI for something on the vertical axis, and how kind of weird and niche and specific what they're asking for on the horizontal axis, what you would see is something a bit like this, where tons of people probably search for, say, diabetes. But very few people probably search for, I don't know, diabetes recipes for gluten intolerant vegetarians, for example. That would be like way off to one side of the graph, kind of over here. So what we know is that users are learning to be increasingly specific when they use these generative AI services, partly because it's very tailored, so they know they're going to get a response to a specific query. And also, partly because the AI actually coaches them to do that. If they ask for something general, often the AI will ask them some follow-up questions, which ends up channeling their query into something much more specific. So what we need to think about is, the fact that AI probably has a lot already on really general stuff. It knows a lot about diabetes, but it probably doesn't yet know a lot about diabetes diets for gluten intolerant people in this kind of long tail of queries. So if we know a lot from kind of speaking to beneficiaries and service users and just existing in that space about what kind of more niche topics will come up, more specific topics will come up, creating content on your website about that is a good idea as a double whammy, because you're potentially going to get referrals from AI about it. And more importantly, and I think more beneficially, users are potentially going to hit a dead end asking AI about that question and end up using search, or the AI is going to have to search for that information on the web instead and include a reference to your charitable organization. And again, I'm not saying, this, if you just do this, it will replace all the lost traffic that you have. But these are some of the kind of mitigation strategies that are available right now. And that is a pretty strong one. So if you've sorted out your long tail's happy, good example of this, complete guide to a vegan barbecue from the Humane League. Every time I read the Humane League, I get Human League songs stuck in my head. But anyway, they have a bunch of really kind of good long tail content for helping to try and convert people to vegetarianism and veganism and away from dependency on kind of factory farmed animals. And they do that with this kind of engaging long tail content that they know people will be kind of searching for and asking for. Another way to try and get referenced and influence what AIs think about particular topics, and also to show up in different types of kind of real estate on Google search results, is to reformat some of your content in question and answer format. This is a good example from Parkinson's UK, that a lot of their content is available now using a Q&A style format, because that gives a really strong prompt. All AI is all generative text-based large language model attention mechanism based AI, i.e. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, is basically a very, very sophisticated word prediction machine, a very sophisticated autocomplete. So, it knows the answer to a question because it often sees content after that same question or after a similar question appear. And that's how it creates a link, a contextual relationship between the answer and the question. So if you start to use kind of questions as headings more on your website, you will be influencing that a lot more strongly than perhaps websites which are not using a Q&A format. And that makes you more likely to influence the training weightings, which will reshape the recommendations or the responses that the AI is giving, and potentially, in a small number of cases, make you more likely to be referenced by the AI with a link. You can further help both AI and search by doing something or asking your resident kind of office geek. They probably, have glasses and a beard and look a bit like me if you don't know where they are. But to provide schema markup and metadata on your website. So schema markup is basically just some kind of hidden information that says, hey, this is an article that was written by this person. It's about this topic. We published it on this date. And it just really helps these services to kind of understand exactly what the information is and how it's structured. One thing that you may not be considering when you're thinking about how to deal with this kind of challenge is also that it's not all about your website. A lot of these services have been trained on huge data sets from kind of forums, social media feeds, sites like Reddit. Now, a lot of these websites have kind of clamped down on AI scraping their information, Facebook and X being two good examples of that, which is probably for the best given the amount of kind of hateful shite on both of those platforms in recent months. But platforms like Reddit, kind of Wikipedia, publicly available databases, they may have information about your organization or your cause or your charity services. And actually, even old Reddit threads that kind of come up when you search for something, it's worth leaving a comment on that post, because that's still something that may well be ingested and used to kind of train AI and to particularly inform AI overviews on search. So, that's the kind of top tip for you. Check Wikipedia, have a search through Google, and any forums or any Reddit threads that come up, add a comment. Don't make it cheesy. Try and add value to the conversation genuinely. Don't just be like, oh, visit our organization to donate to, because, it probably won't go down very well by somebody reading it, and it may also get kind of blocked. But, maybe encourage a volunteer or a donor to kind of, submit a response to one of those threads, for example. It's a bit more genuine. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our grief cycle. We just got two more steps, and we're just going to make a brief pit stop into depression. Promise it'll be brief. But we've kind of been here before, right? We used to be establishing our websites as the kind of authoritative voice on a particular topic on the internet, and that was helped by the fact that there wasn't a lot of other kind of noise on the internet around those particular kind of issues, and also because people trusted charities. And sadly, we're in a situation, there's probably a strong relationship between these two things, where, social media has often become a kind of primary source of information about particular topics, especially if you're working in a kind of politically charged area like LGBTQ plus rights or immigration. And that's taking kind of traffic away. But also, charities being less trusted means that people are less likely to kind of believe a charity above and beyond, say, a company or a social media website. And effectively, I'm kind of sad to say, I think we're in a bit of a repeat of that sort of scenario, that ultimately these AI companies, for a large section of the population, are soon going to define what people believe, what is the truth, what are the facts of the matter, what people do when they're diagnosed with something. They're going to have an enormous influence over that, and we're going to see increasing attempts to shape and influence that by large companies with huge budgets and lots of lobbying power, and also from nation state level kind of bad actors who are going to want to use these technologies to undermine democratic processes, influence elections, and just generally sow division in society. So yeah, there's depression hour. We'll kind of move on, but it's kind of worth noting that this isn't our first rodeo with this, and I think we need a stronger, harder reaction to this than we had when social media came along. Bouncing straight out of depression, I think the best place to be, obviously, through that kind of grief model, is acceptance. So I just want to give you some much more strategic kind of advice now about where to go as a kind of next step in terms of formulating your ongoing strategy in this area. If we accept that this is happening, how do we react to it? Well, one of the best things you can do, I think, is to create what's called AI resistant content. And AI resistant content is stuff that AI, at least currently, can't do, or is unlikely to ever be able to do very well. AI is often just reformulating information based on kind of averages and the most common, most likely response to things, with a bit of randomity kind of sprinkled in to make it look a little bit kind of human and unpredictable. So actually, if you can create things that are, partial, they are, opinionated, they are funny, they are brave, they are impactful, they are emotive, things like this. Those things are always going to outshine what AI can do in those areas. One of our clients, a fantastic organization, Material Focus, they on their website that we made for them have this mascot, if you like, called HypnoCat, which tries to hypnotize you into recycling your electrical goods. That's not going to be an approach that AI takes, and it's kind of funny. It's something you'd send to your mates. It's entertaining, things like that. AI's, I think, always going to struggle with, no matter how many kind of emojis it tries to sprinkle into its responses recently. Depth and originating kind of information. So Liberty, another one of our clients, here with an expose, a kind of a deep piece of kind of journalism uncovering the crackdown on pro-Palestinian activism at UK universities, doing a freedom of information request to dozens of universities and tabulating the responses. This is really good kind of juicy stuff. The kind of stuff that when you read it, you think, oh yeah, this is, if AI is like junk food, this is like a satisfying meal at a restaurant. So, moving more of your kind of content creation towards perhaps fewer, but much more in depth, much more original pieces, is going to increase your AI resistancy. And also just kind of, stories from beneficiaries, impactful, emotive, and real stories. Because AI is not going to tell a lot of real stories very often. It might tell pastiche stories that may have been possible. But actually, unless it's significant kind of historical figures or news figures, it's not necessarily going to have access to that information. And if it does, it's not going to tell it very well or very reliably. So, if you can capture emotive case studies, stories, people always have a hunger for that. And so much the better if you can do it as a video or multimedia content or as a beautifully designed web page with amazing photography, because that's something that AI doesn't currently do. It's just a kind of a text console most of the time. So yeah, do bear that in mind. If you have an issue with filming service users because of anonymity, it is very possible now to use deep fakes to replace that service user's face and voice, but maintain the emotiveness of what they're saying and the realness of the footage. And that's something that we've started to see a little bit, and it's something I can really recommend to overcome that hurdle of we want to protect our service users' anonymity. If you want to go even further, the ultimate AI resistance, I would say, and I think this is something we all need to be thinking about, driving towards as mission-led organizations, is that your website needs to start doing stuff instead of just saying stuff. Okay, so a fantastic example of this, RNID, they have an online hearing test that 600,000 people have used to check their hearing. You're not going to be able to get an AI to check your hearing very easily or very soon, right? So this provides a really clear reason to visit the RNID website, to use it, to punch your email address in it, to share it with your friends. That's a really clear example. More interactive content, to go back to Guts UK. They have, apologies if anybody's eating their breakfast, but they have a phenomenal tutorial little thing that allows you to check your stool for different kind of colors, consistencies, frequencies, and helps you understand what health changes you might need to do or whether you need to visit the doctor or not. Online kind of maps and directories like Material Focus's recycling locations finder, which you can tell exactly the piece of electronics you've got, whether it's broke or whether you're throwing it away, whether you want to donate it, whether you want to bin it. And it will say, here are the 5 places nearest to your house where you can do that. Phenomenally useful stuff that AI can't really do yet. A zakat calculator here from Islamic Relief, helping you understand based on your income and other relevant factors, how much zakat that you should be donating. Another one of our clients, Refuge, have a digital breakup tool to help you to lock down your smartphone apps and other apps if you're just leaving a abusive, coercive, controlling relationship. Koku, a game app that we made based on research at the University of Manchester that allows older people to do exercises and quizzes to help avoid slips, trips, and falls. I could go on and on and on. There are as many different ideas for creating online service delivery opportunities as there are charitable cause areas. So, but if you can invest in this area, these are things that are always going to get driven to, and are particularly going to get driven to by AI, because there's a real need and a real reason for the AI to refer the user on, and that's when it tends to provide a link. Bear in mind as well that you can use AI as part of your website to try and kind of level up what you're doing, or as part of your service. Citizens Advice have built an amazing chatbot service called Caddy, which is actually used by their advisors to increase the quality of responses that they're giving to people calling or who are in touch through chat with Citizens Advice Bureau. This is now something being trialled by the government. We helped Age UK with a service that we built for them, where you can sign up to be a volunteer befriender through their call in time service. You get matched with an older person, and AI listens to those calls, transcribes them, and rates them for risk to flag any safeguarding risks very quickly to their safeguarding team. And don't forget that you don't just have to kind of lean on services like ChatGPT. And it might feel like kind of selling your soul using some of those services if you've got issues with their kind of their ethics, or you feel annoyed that they've stolen your content. It is possible that you can train your own AI, or you can take an AI that's been trained by somebody else who's open sourced it, who's made it freely available, and just extend it, just build on it a bit, And that can be a very cost-effective way to create a new AI, be that a chatbot or a cog that's an important part of an existing service. I'm trying to think of an example, but the only one that's coming to mind is that you could use an image recognition API to make the pootorial from Guts UK respond to a photograph, which is probably not the best example for breakfast time on a Tuesday, but there you go. These AIs can do all sorts of different things, and the power can be in your hands. You are not beholden to these enormous companies like Google, like OpenAI, if you don't want to be. And we're actually using and deploying these services for charities right now. So this isn't just some sort of strange kind of pipe dream or something that only charities with, you know, huge kind of technical budgets can do. It is possible to relatively cost effectively build on open source AI and prototype and embed it in charity services or on websites. We're doing that right now, for example, with Anna Freud, where we're building on an AI in order to be responsive to kind of mental health related queries, where actually hallucinations and invented content will be terrible. So we're actually getting the AI to only recommend chunks of clinically validated content in response to whatever the user's inputting. And we're able to do that by being able to extend and build on AI services rather than just kind of point people off to ChatGPT or just embed ChatGPT on our website and kind of hope for the best. My final two tips for you are, I think you need to start making a benchmark of how useful your website is against AI. So, you know, go to ChatGPT, go to Gemini, and start asking it the kind of questions you know your users are coming to your website to try and answer. Are you better, or are you the same, or are you worse? Because if you're not doing better, then increasingly there's going to be no need to visit your charity website, and that's kind of harsh, but that is the truth. So, you know, getting into the habit of this kind of AI benchmarking, I think, really important. And lastly, make sure you don't, in the race to kind of, you know, deal with AI and kind of adopt AI, make sure you don't neglect good old fashioned kind of email and any other channels that you own a relationship with your end users from, because those are going to become increasingly important. You know, if we're not able to get as many new people through the funnel as easily, then we're going to need to make sure we look after the people that we've got, grow those relationships, build those relationships. And potentially, you know, it's possible to use AI to do that, to personalize that email content, for example, and make it much more engaging to the user, but don't neglect those own channels. So that's all I've got to talk about. I've just got one last thing, which is, important, I think, for me to say. And it's something I've been saying to people that have asked me to kind of come in and talk to them in their organization about AI. We do kind of workshops, we do training. And the thing that I always like to leave them with is the fact that, as I said before, this isn't my first rodeo. So this is what I used to look like before technology took its toll on me. And I, many years ago, spoke to easily tens of thousands, into the tens thousands mark of charities about adopting social media, this new thing that had come out called social media. And my argument was that we really needed to embrace this. We needed to make sure that our charities were there and taking advantage of this phenomenal new way for people to kind of connect to each other, connect to causes, and influence change in the world. You've got to remember it was the time of the Arab Spring, Coney 2012, things like that. And obviously that kind of social media dream has turned out to be somewhat of a social media nightmare. And that really came home to roost for me a few years ago, even before the kind of Elon Musk sort of takeover of X and other things, when I had an interesting encounter with my dad. This is my dad. You probably detected from my accent that I am a northerner. And in fact, I am so northern that my mum and dad met working at a pie factory. And my dad still makes pies today in this little bakery that he runs. And unfortunately, he had to have a break from doing that when he got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, which was obviously a very worrying time for our whole family and for him. And I got my dad an iPad for Christmas one year, and I kind of set him up on social media. And one thing that started to happen, which was really interesting to see first, or rather secondhand, was that he started Googling for his type of cancer, his symptoms, what the treatment was like that he was going to be undertaking. And what then happened when he went back to social media is he started getting a lot of content promoted to him from kind of alternative experts who were saying, oh, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, it's a scam. It's just designed to make money for big pharmaceutical companies. The government knows the cure to cancer, but they're holding it back from people because it's too good business. All you need to do is change the alkalinity level of your blood, and this will cure your cancer. all of this stuff. And my dad in a ill, tired, anxious time, wanted to believe this information rather than believe that he had to go through months of incredibly punishing cancer treatment, which he did, and he's in remission and has been for over 5 years, thankfully. But this content that started being served to him by these social media platforms, there was nothing that I saw that was being kind of counteracted for him by actual charities, by actual organisations, any organisation that was truly understanding what was going on for potential beneficiaries like my dad, and trying to address it and trying to counteract it. And we're seeing that with AI as well. The latest survey from the Centre for the Acceleration of Social Technology, CAST, has found that only 7.5% of UK social sector organisations collect any data at all on the impact of AI on their direct beneficiaries, let alone other people in their cause area. So if there's only one thing you do about AI, I would implore you, please get massively more interested in the impact of other people's use of AI, not necessarily your use of AI, but your beneficiaries, and also, the kind of systems and instruments that are harming your service users and your beneficiaries and have the potential to harm them on them and on society. I think, we have a moral obligation as charitable organisations to actually advocate for the people that are going to be negatively affected by the changes that AI brings to society. And, as always, they are going to be, the most vulnerable and the most in need of support already. The very people that we are connected to, the very people that we're supporting. So that is all I've got time to whiz you through. I'm going to open up to questions now. So yeah, Fanny, do you want to fire away?
Thanks, Matt. There are way too many questions, I think, for us to answer in the remaining 8 minutes. So I'll just start from the beginning. And if we don't get to your question, don't worry. I'm going to ask Matt to answer them written, and we'll send those out as well. So first question, do you think Google Analytics will display results from AI chats like GPT or Chrome AI Overview?
Yeah, we are starting to see ChatGPT as a referral source in some analytics. But of course, if your content has been used as part of an overview, then that person has never clicked on your website and Google Analytics has never been triggered. And I think there's fairly high incentives for the companies to be quite opaque about where they're taking their content from. So I don't think we'll see that on AI overviews, but you will see it from referrals from chat services like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. Look for it as a referral source. And if you're not seeing it, it probably means that you're not getting much referrals from that, which is not an uncommon thing. So don't be too disheartened by that at the moment.
Second question, where AI extensions get their information from? Is it from Adobe Acrobat AI function, AI functions on Google Ads, etc.?
It would depend what you mean by AI extensions. So Anna, if you want to add a comment to your question to clarify that for me. But yeah, then perhaps we can come back to that.
Okie dokie. Third question is from Hannah. We built our website with Reason just over a year ago, and our robots text file was set up with a disallow on GPT bot. Do you think we should reconsider this?
I think it's very contextual, dependent on the cause area and the kind of strategy you're taking. It's really understandable if you're a kind of smaller organization and you don't just want your content ripping off for kind of no benefit to you, that you might want to still kind of opt out of that. What I would say though is that the situation is changing, and we are seeing more and more kind of traffic be siphoned away to these. And the question is, do you want to kind of give up that value in exchange for potentially 1 or 2% kind of gain from that for some cause areas, for some charities? For most of them, I would say, or the majority of them perhaps, that trade-off is starting to reach a tipping point where I'd say that it's there now. For others, it makes sense to try and preserve their uniqueness. I would also ask, how unique is what you've got as well, and would it make a meaningful difference if the AI was to take it, or do you just have something that is similar to what other people have, but higher quality or kind of more verified or validated? You'd also have to navigate whether you feel that you have an obligation to try and influence AI, if you know a lot of your beneficiaries are using that as a source of information, does that just become like another place where you want to get your information out there to try and influence the user, even though it's quite galling that ChatGPT is getting 20 quid a month from that user potentially for a pro account, and you're getting nothing, even though you've invested in the creation of the content. So yeah, it is a bit of a kind of, Faustian pact type scenario.
Thank you. This one's from Rob. With trusted AI results still being relatively low, do you think there will be a bigger push in the future from AI platforms to cite information from trustworthy and authoritative sources? I.e., will EE become even more prominent as GEO ranking factor? Could this position chair decides well moving forward?
Yes, I think you're right, Rob. And like a lot of these AI services didn't actually provide any references at all when they launched. Now we're seeing references on certain queries. The deep research function of these tools gives a lot of referencing because research is an area where you'd want trust. I'd still say they're relatively negatively incentivized from providing too much referencing and too many links, because it kind of shows their hand where they've got their training data from, and it also potentially pushes the users kind of elsewhere. But I think you're right. I think we're not done yet seeing that increase in the amount of referencing that will be provided by AI services. So yeah, I think it's a good shout. Don't just take the current state of affairs as where we'll be. Try and skate to where the puck's going, and I think the puck will go towards a place where there are more references and citations. Whether they'll just be like tiny little grey links that don't really get noticed except by the most motivated of users or not, I think that's a question that we're yet to see answered.
Thank you. This one's from Matthew, sorry. Lots of good comments in the chat about tracking traffic from AI, Google Analytics, for example. And Daniel, another attendee, has made a point that if AI uses our stuff as a trusted source, that is supporting the mission irrespective of traffic. But many of us have funders, donors that demand information on traffic and downloads. And while these might be vanity metrics, they are also what they use. So how do we deal with the paradox, given we have no way of getting all the data, and the data we have is reducing, looking less impressive?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, it's a great point. And I think we're back where we were in the kind of social media days where we're like, oh, we need to educate these funders that actually we can do stuff in other places. Sadly, we get less data and less information from AI. So we have less kind of numbers to work with them on. But I think, I feel like the right funder would respond positively to a charity that was saying, hey, we're grasping this. We've given somebody responsibility to do a full report on what AI is saying in our cause area and how much of it is true or false. We're actively trying to influence and engage with these AI platforms by making our content available, emailing them, contacting them, downvoting bad responses, and this service has the potential to reach and impact the lives of, X estimate, number of people in UK that lean on AI multiplied by number of people with condition would give you a broad estimate of that. So, yeah, I think it's there's no kind of easy answer to that one, but I think we're going to have to kind of advocate and educate funders around this. But I think the charities that get on the front foot and are really kind of forward facing with it are the ones that are most likely to be perhaps bought into by those funders. Perhaps that's a naive hope, but it's one I believe.
Thanks, Matt. Another one from Lewis. Given we know how people are getting information through Gen AI tools that crawl your website and will probably only continue to do so more, does it make sense now to have your own audience-facing AI tool, i.e. a chatbot?
Yes and no. I mean, the way that a lot of charities feel that they've dealt with AI is they're like, hey, we've got a chatbot now. And as you can see from this talk, I've deliberately not even included that because I think, whilst AI gives us the opportunity to create chatbots, unless they are, delivering over and above what that user can get from something like ChatGPT, potentially it's not the answer. I would think about how much added value your chatbot in particular is giving. Is it because it's giving, much more trusted advice? Does it have a greater depth of expertise in a particular area? Does it really know the UK kind of health system? Or, has it been designed with a lot of specific user research around how people experience that exact kind of moment or condition and what kind of questions they ask? And it's very kind of adept at answering those, I guess. Those would be the kind of questions I would ask. Also, chatbots have a bit of functionality. Oh, hey, answer these questions and I'll give you a PDF of a filled-in referral form for your local authority so you can access this benefit. That would also be kind of over and above. But just a kind of a generic chatbot, I'm thinking that we kind of tick the AI box and people have a reason to visit us instead of ChatGPT. No, I don't think that's it, sadly.
So we've got 2 more questions in the Q&A section, and I think we've actually just overgone by 1 minute. So if we could answer those 2 questions, and then we'll wrap it up there. And then any other questions that were in the chat, we'll get your answers after. So one from Priscilla. What do you think will be the value of helplines going forward, whether phone, live chat, WhatsApp? Will people still want to contact a human, and are there ways to optimize AI pointing people to these services?
Yeah, great question. Great thought, Priscilla. I mean, I think there's certain things that AI will never be able to replace. And I think we shouldn't discount what might be called the soft value, but I think it's really the biggest of feeling heard, feeling understood, feeling listened to, feeling more regulated by connecting with another real human being at what could be the worst time of our life. So I really feel like the human kind of urge to kind of reach out to a person will definitely remain, and I think may even grow stronger. I mean, I've got access to pretty much every recorded piece of music ever at a moment's click through Spotify. And I have a record player in my house because sometimes I want to pick up an old vinyl and put it on and have that very physical analog experience listening to a record with friends. And I think we're going to see, the vinyl of kind of AI start to emerge in the next couple of years, which I think will be kind of real in person, connected to humans. That kind of stuff will feel much more precious and much more valuable. And I think charities are well placed to kind of take advantage of that, so long as they maintain the humanity in their services. So really, I would sort of say that the question is, how can we use AI to free up our humans to do more of what only humans can? Listen, empathize, connect, and care. And I think that's a much better use of AI than how can we replace all our helpline services with a kind of a robot. And those are definitely the kind of projects that I'm most interested in, is where AI kind of makes things better, not worse, makes us frees up more human time and capacity, not less.
Thank you. And last question, we don't currently list contributing experts on our health info. Would this be a good EE signal?
I don't know. That's a pretty deep SEO question, and I don't have that expertise. Ironically, I will look it up for you, Deirdre. I'll get back to you. I think a lot of what Google does is around kind of expertise is based on kind of citations and referring links and stuff. So if you can get your content kind of cited by other places, linked to from other places, particularly well-trusted authoritative domains that might be things like universities, research institutes, journals, then those definitely have a higher kind of expertise signal rating. Whether actually just listing the individual and some of their qualifications would work, I'm not sure. My intuition is it probably will start to factor in, because generative AI has increased the capabilities of Google to be able to rank on the actual content of the words and the meaning of the words, not just the links and kind of more technical factors. That said, if you could do that and anybody could do that, then I guess that might devalue that influence as well. If anybody could just paste a few experts' name on a page to get it further up the rankings. So, but yeah, I will have a look into it and I will get back to you.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you for sticking with us, even though we've overgone a couple of minutes, which I'm sorry about. Again, thank you, Matt, as well. If you have any further questions, please drop us an email at hello@reasondigital. And I just wanted to say again that this has been recorded, and the recording will be made available to the attendees in the next couple of days. Thank you very
Great
much.
to see you all. Thanks very much, everybody. Yeah, look forward to speaking to you again soon. Have a good day.
Thank you. See you later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.